Hello dear students. Today we're going to talk about how to solve para-jumbles for the CAT exam. Now let us first understand why is it important to attempt these kind of questions in the CAT exam. For this we need to understand that they come under a category known as VARC. That stands for Verbal Ability Reading Comprehension questions. Now these kind of questions are total 24 in number. And from these 24 questions, we get around 5 to 6 questions that are either reasoning based, sentence completion, odd one out, or are para-jumbles. Right. Now the good news about this topic is that there is no negative marking under this section. Why is that? Because these kind of questions come under a category known as non-MCQ questions. Now CAT exam has a criteria that they do not negatively mark you even if you attempt a wrong question in this section. That means that you can attempt all the questions in this section even if you're not sure about the correct answer. Okay. Now let us jump into what are para-jumbles. Now as the name suggests, para-jumbles are sentences that are jumbled for the test taker to unjumble and form a cohesive paragraph. Now that means that we'll be provided with some sentences and we have to unjumble them and form a cohesive paragraph, right? But what is a cohesive paragraph? Now it stands for two major keywords. First being order and the second being meaning. Right? Now, order stands for that every sentence in the cohesive paragraph should follow a particular sequence and it should have a meaning associated with it. Only then it will be called a cohesive paragraph. Now consider a real life example of para-jumbles. Think about jigsaw puzzles. You have to combine every piece together to form a single image, right? That is what you have to do in para-jumbles. You have to unjumble every single sentence and produce a single order with meaning associated with every single sentence to form a cohesive paragraph. Alright students, now that we're clear with the meaning of para-jumbles, let us attempt an example of para-jumbles just on the basis of our common sense. Now we're provided with 5 sentences here labeled A, B, C, D, E. When properly sequenced, would yield a coherent paragraph or a cohesive paragraph. That means we have to unjumble all of these sentences and produce a cohesive paragraph. Now in the exam, you might be provided with 5 or you might be provided with 4 sentences. It is a variable number, but you have to produce a cohesive paragraph using all of those sentences, right? Okay. Some of the sentences will appear on your screen. Some of the questions will be appeared as in-text questions right now in this video. Your video will be paused and then you have to attempt all of those questions right now. Options will be provided, but in the CAT exam, you will not be provided with MCQ questions, but you have to write on the answer on your own. Just for your help, we're providing you with MCQ options here. Okay, let's start with the question. Now, starting with sentence A, Michael Hoffman, which is a name, a poet and a translator, accepts this sorry fact without approval or complaint. Now I see 2 major keywords here. First is a noun and the second one is a pronoun. Okay. Sentence B, but thanklessness and impossibility do not daunt him. Now but is a transition word that shows contrast to me. Right? Okay. Sentence C, he acknowledges to. Now we don't know who he is, so this cannot open a paragraph because we cannot open a paragraph with uncertainty, right? Sentence D, Hoffman. Now we see that the name Michael Hoffman, which was given in sentence A, has been abbreviated and has been used as Hoffman, but not as Michael Hoffman in sentence D. That means this can also not open a sentence. Sentence E. In terms of gap, between worth and rewards, translators come somewhere near nurses and street cleaners. Now, this sentence might open my paragraph. Why is that? Because this sentence gives me the main idea of the paragraph. That means that I have to find the main idea of the paragraph to start with the opening sentence, right? Okay. So if I start with E and then I pick up A, as it has a major noun here, which is a full name, but this full name is not given in rest of the sentences, so I might have an idea that sentence A might come after sentence E. So I put in sentence A after E. And we move on to sentence C. As we can see that he acknowledges to. In fact, now he here is again a pronoun, and this pronoun might be linked. This he might be a person who is Michael Hoffman. So I am just going with the hit and trial method and I'm picking up C after A. Okay. Now, I know that in sentence B, I have a transition word, and a transition word or a contrast cannot ever end a sentence. So I will pick up B after C, and so obviously D will come at the very end. Now, if you check the correct answer of this para jumble, it is this only, EACBD. But it took a lot of time for us to solve this question, right? Now, we won't have that much of time in our CAT exam. That means that we have to pick up some tips and tricks to solve this para jumble within seconds. Now, I will tell you about these tips and tricks later on in this video. But first, we need to understand what types of para jumbles do you encounter in your CAT exam. Now, the first category is introductory or opening sentence provided. That means that if you're given a list of 5 sentences in your para jumble, your first sentence will be fixed. You cannot move this sentence, but you can move around the rest of the sentences to form a cohesive paragraph, right? Second category is closing sentence provided. That means your 5th sentence will also be fixed, but the first sentence can be moved around here, because just the closing sentence is provided, not the introductory sentence, right? So you can move around sentence 1, 2, 3 and 4, but the 5th sentence cannot be moved around. Now, in the third category, opening and closing, both the sentences are fixed. That means that you can only move around these 3 sentences to form a cohesive paragraph. Now, this makes it the easiest category in the para jumble question, because you just have to move around, you just have to unjumble 3 sentences and your answer will be done. Okay, the fourth and the most difficult category is neither opening nor closing sentence provided. That means all of these sentences are not fixed, none of them are fixed, and you have to unjumble all of these sentences to form a cohesive paragraph, right? Now, we know what kind of para jumbles we will encounter in our CAT exam. So let's move on to the tips and tricks to solve these para jumbles in just a few seconds. Okay, the first technique would be identifying the opening and closing statements. What does this mean? Look at this example that we just solved. We identified an opening statement and a closing statement so that our work is done much more easily. We just have to look around 3 sentences now and we will be able to form a cohesive paragraph, right? So your first step should be to find the opening and closing statements. Okay, that means you have to find a statement which can introduce a topic and which can conclude a topic, right? Second approach would be to find the central theme of the paragraph. That means that you have to find the core of the paragraph. The major objective that the paragraph carries is important to be known by you to find out the correct order in which all the sentences are woven. Which takes us to the next technique, which is checking out the weaving of the sentences. All the sentences in a cohesive paragraph are woven together in a particular pattern. That tells us that what sentence comes where. Okay? That means that you have to check out in what order and in what sequencing every paragraph has the sentences woven, right? If you check out the weaving pattern of every sentence, you'll be able to understand what is the correct sequence of the parajumble. The next and the very general approach is general to specific. Now think about it. When you have to tell something to someone, you tell about the general characteristics of that something first and then you move into specificity. You will never tell about the details in the very beginning and then move into general characteristics, right? That is how you have to solve parajumbles. You have to look out for sentences that tell you about more general characteristics of the paragraph. And then you move into sentences that are much more detailed, right? The next technique is hypothesis followed by example. Now this technique is not always a go-to approach. Why is that? Because sometimes an example is provided first and then a hypothesis or a theory is given to support that example, right? But what we're talking about here is that we're giving a theory and an example is later on provided to support this theory, right? In this method, you'll be able to understand that the sentence containing the theory will come first and then the example sentence. But again, as I told you before, sometimes the example is provided first and then the theory is given to support the example. So this is not always a go-to approach, but you can still use it sometimes. Alright, the next technique would be finding out the chronological order of all the sentences. What does this mean? This means that you have to prioritize all the sentences in the paragraph according to a technique called what comes first. Okay, that means that you have to check out every sentence and look for keywords that will make you understand that what should come first, and then you will produce a single order of all the sentences. Easy approach. Alright, the next approach will be identifying mandatory pairs. What are mandatory pairs? These pairs are such words that cannot be separated. Okay, that means that you have to look for these mandatory pairs in every sentence and you will be able to combine two or more sentences together and it will make your task much more easier. For example, I have a word in sentence 2 and I also have a word in sentence 5 and both these words are interlinked or are mandatory pairs. Now I will know that I cannot separate these two words. That means either the order will be 2 and 5 or the order will be 5 and 2. Right? Okay. The next approach is following noun-pronoun relationship. You have to understand that always and always a noun precedes a pronoun. That means a noun will come first and then a pronoun will follow that noun. The next technique would be identifying transition words. Now look at the example that we solved. In sentence B, I told you that we have a transition word that shows us about contrast. right? Now, when we found this transition word, we knew that this sentence cannot end this paragraph. That is what I'm trying to tell you here. You have to find out transition words that will tell you about the correct order of the paragraph. Right. Okay, the last technique is learning the art of storytelling. Now, this is the most important technique, as this technique will tell you about all the summary, about all of the techniques that we solved in here and here. Okay. This technique basically talks about when you're trying to narrate a story to someone, what are the major points that come to your mind, and what is the order of all the points that you're going to deliver out when you're narrating the story. When you will be able to understand this approach, you will be able to arrange all the sentences of the paragraph in the correct order and hence produce a coherent paragraph. Okay. Now that we know about all the tips and tricks, we will solve a real CAT question, a previous year question of the CAT exam with these tricks. Alright, now that we know about all the tips and tricks to solve parajumbles, let us solve a real previous year question of the CAT exam here below. Now, we're provided by 4 sentences in this paragraph, not 5, labeled as 1, 2, 3, 4, and we have to properly sequence all of these sentences to produce a coherent paragraph. Okay, let's start with the first sentence. While you might think that you see or aware, I don't need to read the next sentence. I know that I see a transition word here, which is while. Now, I know that this sentence will not start or end my paragraph, right? Second sentence. Psychologists use the term change blindness to describe this tendency to not read the rest of the paragraph. I see a pronoun here, that means this will also not start the paragraph. However, this might end the paragraph. Third sentence. It cannot be aware. It is again a pronoun. I don't know what it is, so this will not start the paragraph. Fourth sentence. Sometimes big shifts happen in front of your eyes and you're not at all aware of these changes. Now, I see a keyword here, we're talking about big shifts and something with the eyes. Now, I somehow am getting the main idea of the paragraph. That means that this fourth sentence might start my paragraph, right? So that means 4 will come first. Now, if you look at sentence 2, I see this, a pronoun here. Maybe in sentence 4, we're talking about big shifts that is being discussed in detail in the second paragraph. We're moving with the approach called general to specific. So I will put 2 after 4. Okay. Third sentence. It cannot be aware. Now, I don't know what it is, so I cannot put it after 2. That means I cannot put 3 after 2. First sentence. While you might think that you see or are aware of all the changes that happen in front of your immediate environment, there is simply too much information for your brain to fully process everything. Now, it in sentence 3 might be brain in sentence 1. So, I will put 1 and then I will put 3. Now, if you check the correct answer of this previous year question of the CAT exam, the correct answer is 4213. Now, we solved this question in just a few seconds. I was explaining to you, so it might have taken a little bit more of your time. But when you will solve this question in your CAT exam, you will be able to crack this question just in a few seconds. Okay. Before we move further, there are some major key points that you need to keep in mind when you're solving parajumbles. The first one is keeping an eye on the clock. That means keeping in mind that you have a particular time limit and you cannot exceed that. You have to solve every single question in the parajumble category in a particular time frame. When you see that you're exceeding the time limit, skip the question and move on to the next one. Okay. Next technique is elimination of the unnecessary. We have discussed about a lot of tips and tricks here, but not all of these tips and tricks are used in every question. So you need to understand what is the approach that I need to apply in this question and eliminate the rest of it. Okay. The last and the major key point is to reread sentence to ensure continuity. When you think that sentence 2 will come after sentence 3, you have to read all these sentences together to make sure that there is continuity. Right? Okay. Now, what to do when you're running out of time? I've told you about major tips and tricks and the key points that will make sure that you solve para-jumbles in just seconds. But what to do when you see that you're elapsing your time? First thing to keep in mind is to be vigilant. That means you have to be aware. You have to pay attention to major keywords that you see in every sentence and mark them, so that when you move on to the next sentence, you'll be able to correlate these sentences together and form a weaving pattern. Second thing to keep in mind is to look for connectors. Again, the links between two sentences that combine them together, you have to look for connectors and check the weaving pattern, as we discussed before, of the sentences. Okay. The last thing to keep in mind when you're running out of time is to practice enough so that you do not exceed the time limit. It is very important to be prepared mentally for any kind of paragraph that you will encounter in your CAT exam. So you have to practice enough to make sure that you solve your question in the particular time frame which is provided to you in the exam. Alright students, I hope you people have understood now how to crack para-jumbles in your CAT exam. Much more content about this topic is uploaded on the Edurif app. You can check out the CAT course here and know more about para-jumbles by entering the verbal ability and reading comprehension section. You can unlock the locked videos, documents and tests of the CAT course series with Edurif Infinity Plan and ace your exam at less than 80 rupees a month. Thank you.